event that he does before the election. Those are some of the things, and he's also requested for the support and the confidence of the electorate in this process to help the Commission deliver on its promise. Richard?
Philly Haza, thank you for that excellent reporting. Still in Nigeria, there is a twist to the story of an attack that reportedly claimed over 60 lives in some communities in Kaduna State in the northwest part of Nigeria. Authorities said 66 persons were killed by unknown gunmen in Kajuru on Friday night. Among the dead were 22 women and 12 children. But some of the residents are telling a different story. CGTN's Deji Badmus has more on that.
This is one of the communities in Kajuru local government area of the northwest Kaduna State. The authorities say 66 villagers were killed in a nighttime attack on Friday, February 15th. Indeed, there was an attack in the community and the signs are clearly visible. But there's a catch. The residents say, contrary to the report put out by the state government, the attack actually happened much earlier.
This incident took place on Sunday, the 10th of February. 10th of February was when this incident took place. So if they are referring to this incident, certainly it cannot be what they are saying. We expected government to have made a press release since either Monday or Tuesday at most. But if that reference is being made to this incident, then I am taken aback, because we are not aware of any incident that took place in Kajuru local government as a whole yesterday, Friday, the 15th of 15th February. No.
It's very shocking to everybody around here. And we stand to say nothing like that has ever happened. I don't know whether it's a ploy to truncate the elections which was to take place on Saturday, but we are very happy that you people came, and so by yourself, you will be able to go and report exactly what your eyes saw and what you hear from the real people who are here and not from any other place.
On the death toll which state authorities had put at 66, they say the casualty figure is way lower and that the attackers were strange headsmen.
In total, we lost 6 males and 5 females in the community. There's no trace as to where they might have come from, for they came in the night, on the night cover. And after they finished their operation, nobody can tell exactly the direction they took. And what surprises us most is that there has never been any record of any clash between the Fulani and the native Adara. Our suspicion, anyway, is that it cannot be the local Fulani that will say maybe have been grazing their cattle into our farms, and it cannot be them, because we have never had any clash with them.
5 of the dead in the community are buried in these graves. And while the community mourns its dead, there's still several unanswered questions over the attack, including the narrative of the government. Deji Badmus, CGTN, Kaduna, Nigeria.
All right, let's turn our attention to Kelechi Makalam, who is standing by with more on that story. Kelechi, is Nigeria experiencing an upsurge of attacks during this electioneering period?
Well, yes. Historically, Nigeria's elections have always been tense. This one isn't any different. Like in the northeast, we've seen series of attacks by suspected Boko Haram terrorists, like the bomb attack in Maiduguri, where nearly a dozen were killed. There's also been attacks on the Borno State Governor's Convoy. We've seen that happen. We've also seen attacks around the country, like the one that you just reported in Kaduna, where 66 persons were killed, and several others. Now, these sort of attacks are expected. We've heard comments from Information Minister Lai Mohammed alleging that the opposition will be trying to use gunmen and Boko Haram to cause violence. Also, the U.S. Institute of Peace has said that there would be increased violence during this electioneering period. And there's been rising tension. So, yes, it's expected.
All right. Kelechi, let's talk about those attacks. The attacks in Kaduna and Maiduguri, how are they likely to impact on the vote in those regions?
Well, basically, when we see such attacks occurring at a time like this during an electioneering period, it's expected that it would put a lot of tension into the people. It will cause a lot of tension in the atmosphere. It will cause fear among the people, and it's definitely going to affect people who intend to go cast their votes. And some people might just say, oh, they do not want to, go out and get killed or get injured during this period, especially knowing that they're not quite certain what would take place, if there could be a bomb attack or there could be some sporadic shootings. So it would definitely put some level of fear in the minds of the people, and it could, restrain people from going to cast their votes on election day.
Well, Kelechi, the government obviously still has a responsibility to protect its citizens. What are they doing to uphold security during this period?
Well, indeed, you are right. The government does have the responsibility to ensure the lives and properties of the citizens are secure. And they have said that they will beef up security, especially in those areas where you have violent-prone areas. They've also sent out security officials to man some strategic areas. That aside, they're also calling on citizens, because the government, the security agencies are saying that they cannot do this on their own. So they would require citizens as well to give information where needed. So if citizens, for instance, have some vital information that could lead to capture someone, for instance, they would be willing to, to get such information. So in that regard, the security agencies are saying that they would continue to beef up security and work with citizens to ensure that the lives and property of people in the country are safe.
Kelechi Makalam, thank you for your insights. Thank you for your analysis. With that being said, is right back to you, Karen Roberts in Nairobi.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Richard. That was Richard Ntar for us there in Abuja, following what's happening with the Nigerian elections. To Guinea-Bissau now, and the country's legislative elections are set to be held on the 10th of March. This follows an agreement brokered by ECOWAS between President José Mario Vaz and the opposition. The polls were earlier scheduled for the 18th of November last year. The former Portuguese colony has been locked in a political standoff since President Mario Vaz sacked his premier in 2015. The poll was delayed due to difficulties in drawing up an electoral list. Well, last month, the UN pressed the government to finally set an election date. Voters believe the upcoming polls will diffuse the long-running crisis in the West African nation.
We are going to choose whoever is the best for everyone, so he can govern us, whoever will value us. We don't want to go through again what we already went through.
Well, we are going to a short break now. Don't go away. Lots more to come, including Islamic State militants claim responsibility for an attack in Egypt that killed 15 troops. And Kenya recalls its envoy from Somalia over an oil block dispute.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice. My home country lies at the foot of Africa, the southernmost tip of our beautiful continent, and the unique point at which two great oceans meet. Now, on a clear day in Cape Town, you can just make out Robben Island, the place where Nelson Mandela was jailed for so long. South Africa has changed so much in the years since then, but it is this country's history that shaped me and took me into reporting. I'm inspired by Africa's men and women of courage. It's the everyday hero who brings up my passion. The creatives, the decision makers, the risk takers who are shaping a bright African future. I see them in Cape Town. I see them in the pulsating city of Johannesburg. I see them across the continent, and I know our time has come.
CGTN is a platform where African voices can speak for themselves and take their stories to the world. My name is Lindy Tongana, and I'm a news anchor and reporter for CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Seven Islamic State militants have been killed in a clash with the Egyptian military. 15 military personnel were also either killed or wounded in the North Sinai attack. ISIL is claiming responsibility. Authorities are still searching for the militants involved. Egyptian officials launched an anti-terrorism campaign last year in the Sinai region. They claim to have killed hundreds of militants since then. Kenya has recalled its ambassador to the Federal Republic of Somalia. This follows allegations over auctioning of oil and gas blocks in disputed territorial waters in the Indian Ocean. Kenya has also ordered the Somali ambassador to Kenya, Mohammed Ahmed Noto, to leave the country. Well, according to Kenya's Foreign Affairs Ministry, the auction took place in London last week. Kenya and Somalia have a territorial dispute case at the International Court of Justice. Well, CGTN's Abdulaziz Bilo is following this from Mogadishu and now joins us live. Abdulaziz, what has been the reaction in Somalia following this move by Kenya?
Well, Karen, there's been no major announcement yet from the federal government of Somalia, but probably by the end of the day we might have a statement from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. There might also be a series of meetings that might take place before that announcement. But then again, it has become the topic of discussion since yesterday on social media and across the local radio and TV channels, including social media. Somalis have been debating that recent move by Nairobi to recall its ambassador to Mogadishu, and at the same time asking the Somali ambassador to leave its country so that it can come to Mogadishu for consultation. But then again, one thing to note, Karen, is the different kind of communication that both governments have used. Kenya is saying that Somalia did an auctioning of oil blocks that are in its territory, and Somalia is arguing to the contrary. It's saying that what it presented in London on the 7th of February was just a data that was released by a company called Spectrum. So is a company that did survey here in Somalia on potential oil and gas reserves. So Kenya is saying that some of those oil blocks, 206 in numbers, some of them fall under the disputed territory that is currently being addressed by the International Court of Justice, as you have mentioned. So probably by the end of the day we might have a statement, but then again the move came as a surprise to many experts here in the country, who was saying that the relationship between Kenya and Somalia was gradually improving over the years since the election of President Farmajo and the repeated visit by Somali leaders to Kenya and the close cooperation in terms of security. So it remains to be seen how this will be solved diplomatically. But the Somali ambassador has already arrived here in Mogadishu, Mohammed Ahmed Noor Tarsan, and it might be also included in in the series of meetings before a decision is reached, Karen.
Okay, so no official statement yet. You were saying that the relationship between the two countries has been improving, but as we know, there has been a love-hate relationship for a while now. What are the projections in Somalia over how this is likely to end?
Well, Karen, one controversial issue that the two countries are currently at loggerheads, one is the maritime dispute, and it is one of the reasons as to why Somalia preferred that the International Court of Justice address the maritime dispute between Kenya and Somalia. The case might be solved probably by this year or probably next year, but the legal teams from both Kenya and Somalia are currently involved in the case that's happening in Hague of Netherlands. But then again, the relationship between Somalia and Kenya is a very strategic and very much important. One, Kenya hosts the biggest number of Somali refugees, close to 400,000 who live in Dadaab settlements in northeastern Kenya. Also on the other end, Kenya has the third biggest troop contributing force to AMISOM, a peacekeeping mission that has stabilized southern Somalia and also the border it shares with Kenya. So the relationship between these two countries is very much important also in terms of trade. Several airlines actually fly out of Nairobi to Mogadishu on a daily basis, and also Somalia is the biggest importer of the leafy narcotic stimulant known as khat that is very popular here in Somalia, making millions of dollars for Kenyan traders there, especially in the eastern province of Kenya. So the relationship is bound to improve drastically, but it is one depending on the outcome of what Somali authorities might decide. But the relationship is important. Even the foreign minister of Somalia was recently in Kenya, in northeastern Kenya, and they signed an agreement with the foreign minister of Kenya along the border town of Mandera, joint cooperation in terms of trade, in terms of security. So experts are saying that that relationship must be preserved for the general good and for the greater security of both regions.
Okay, thank you very much. That was CGTN's Abdulaziz Billo there following this story in Mogadishu for us. Well, let's stay with this story. I'm joined now in the studio by Dr. Hassan Kananji. He is an international relations expert. Thank you very much for joining us. Well, we were listening there to Abdulaziz explaining the importance of the relationship between the two countries, Somalia and Kenya. With this cutting off of diplomatic ties between the two countries, it's the culmination of a long dispute, as he was describing. What do you think is the progress so far in the International Court of Justice over this border dispute?
Yeah, it's indeed a culmination of a long tit-for-tat game that's been going on between neighborly countries. Now, Kenya lost its preliminary objections against the case being had by the ICJ because of the prior existing memorandum of understanding between Kenya and Somalia that provided for a negotiated settlement. However, I think stand right now the case is yet to be heard and determined fully. Okay, so we're still waiting for that. Now, what is your opinion? Can this be resolved? This is resolvable, in part because Kenya and Somalia are codependent. They are neighbors since independence and even before independence. And I think a way, rather than going through the ICJ, perhaps they can find an alternative dispute solution outside the ICJ, in part because we know cases the ICJ sometimes can drag on for a very long time, and that is potentially going to hurt both countries economically. And of course, you know, security, that's a big issue here, and Kenya has been helping Somalia quite a bit on this. What sort of impact do you think this is likely going to have on combating terrorism? There is a symbiotic relationship, especially when it comes to the war against terror between Kenya and Somalia. Kenya needs Somalia's at least consent to be able to operate fully under AMISOM and to be able to expand its mission in there to be successful. But Somalia also needs the Kenya's presence, in part because it's limited with regard to security and with regard to area of operation. So I think both countries are going to have to find a way of working together. In the absence of that, it's going to greatly affect the war against terror, not just in Somalia, but in the Horn of Africa region. Okay, thank you very much for your analysis, as always. Dr. Hassan Kananji there, thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
A recap of our top stories now. Nigeria's Independent Electoral Commission is conducting an audit into how some sensitive election material was distributed before Election Day on Saturday. Chairman Mahmoud Yakubu says it has now all been returned to the central bank. Yakubu announced in the early hours of Saturday that the vote would be postponed until next Saturday, February the 23rd. Guinea-Bissau will hold its legislative elections on the 10th of March. This follows an agreement brokered by ECOWAS between President José Mario Vaz and the opposition. The polls were earlier scheduled for the 18th of November last year. The former Portuguese colony has been locked in a political standoff since President Mario Vaz sacked his premier in 2015. The poll was delayed due to difficulties in drawing up an electoral list. 7 Islamic State militants have been killed in a clash with the Egyptian military. 15 military personnel were also either killed or wounded in the North Sinai attack. ISIL is claiming responsibility. Authorities are still searching for the militants involved. Egyptian officials launched an anti-terrorism campaign last year in the Sinai region. They claim to have killed hundreds of militants since then. And Kenya has recalled its ambassador to the Federal Republic of Somalia. This follows allegations over auctioning of oil and gas blocks in disputed territorial waters in the Indian Ocean. Kenya has also ordered the Somali ambassador to Kenya, Mohammed Ahmed Noto, to leave the country. But according to Kenya's Foreign Affairs Ministry, the auction took place in London last week. Kenya and Somalia have a territorial dispute case at the International Court of Justice. And those are the top stories that we're covering for you. We are going to a short break. Don't go away. We've got all the business news coming up, including US Vice President Mike Pence criticizes European powers over Iran and Venezuela. And a look at some arguments for and against a US-Mexico border wall from El Paso in Texas.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. You've got to get out, go there, and you'll find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca. Among the crowds in Cairo.
Come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
Along the waters of the Nile. Along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Now to Germany, where world leaders and policymakers have gathered for the annual Munich Security Conference. US Vice President Mike Pence has criticized European powers over Iran and Venezuela. He also hailed President Donald Trump's past 2 years in office and urged NATO's support in isolating Russia. Marquet has more.
Today, America is stronger than ever before, and America is leading on the world stage once again.
A clear message to the world and to America's traditional allies. The Vice President said he expected European countries to do more to increase defense budgets. He also said Washington commands all NATO partners to oppose the Nord Stream 2 program, a gas pipeline under construction between Russia and Germany under the Baltic Sea. He condemned this as dependence on the East, an accusation later rebuked by German Chancellor Angela Merkel.
No one wants to be unilateral and completely unilaterally dependent on Russia.
Pence also reiterated his demand for European powers to withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal after he accused Britain, Germany and France of undermining American sanctions on Tehran last week. But according to his predecessor, pointing fingers may not be the best strategy to get others on board.
And I know we heard a lot today about leadership. But in my experience, leadership only exists if somebody and others are with you. Leadership in the absence of people who are with you is not leadership.
Pence also urged countries at the conference to recognize Venezuelan opposition leader Juan Guaido as the country's president, a request turned down by some outright.
Mr. Pence cannot ask us not to accept the constitutional law of Venezuela.
Success, victory, champion of freedom and national defense. These are some of the other words and phrases Trump's right-hand man used to hail the U.S. leadership in global issues, a position currently under question, even within his own country.
And I'm ashamed that our Vice President of the United States stood up here and at a security conference never even mentioned the word climate change. I wish there was a way to hold the President of the United States accountable for the loss of life that is going to take place every day, for the displacement of people, for the trillions of dollars we will have to wind up spending because we're not getting the job done.
Marco, CGTN.
Chinese telecom giant Huawei is under scrutiny at the conference. US Vice President Mike Pence called the firm a threat to national security systems. China strongly denies the accusations. Victor Ning has the details.
The United States has also been very clear with our security partners on the threat posed by Huawei and other Chinese telecom companies.
Reiterating Washington's accusation, Pence called on allies to exclude Huawei while developing 5G wireless infrastructure. And head of the Chinese delegation swiftly rejected Pence's remarks.
I hope some Americans will have a little bit more confidence in themselves and be a little bit more respectful to other people. People should not and cannot be misled. And Chinese law doesn't require companies to install backdoors or collect intelligence.
Despite U.S. attempts to undermine Huawei, many telecom providers in Europe are still working and testing with Chinese manufacturers, Huawei in particular. The Chinese firm has deals in at least 8 European countries and has tested with local providers in at least 12 EU member states. One of CGTN's current affairs commentators summed up what he thinks Washington is trying to accomplish.
Obviously, that it's a political gambit, kind of let's identify an enemy so that we can castigate them. But the fact is the U.S. has given up on trying to compete fairly and is now trying to trip up their competition.
Huawei is one of the world's leading developers of 5G, so how's the technology looking in the U.S.? Last year, America's biggest telecom company, AT&T, began to advertise its so-called 5G evolution services. It was soon hit with a lawsuit by competitor Sprint. AT&T was accused of false advertising and misleading consumers to believe that its advanced 4G network was actually 5G. Our commentator says America's call to alienate Huawei could end up alienating itself.
The difficulty here is in dealing with Trump is sincerity. You don't know where he draws the line. He's withdrawn from almost every major treaty. He's put Europe in particular in a difficult situation.
For European operators, business is business. After all, the exclusion of Chinese firms would lead to fewer vendors and consequently higher costs.
China's representative Yang Jiechi is the most senior official Beijing has ever sent to the meeting. As CGTN's Daniel Plafka reports, he's pushing for more talks.
Cooperation is the key to global security. That's China's message to leaders at this year's Munich Security Conference. Senior Chinese diplomat Yang Jiechi began his speech by stressing that the world is at a crossroads, facing choices between unilateralism and multilateralism, confrontation and dialogue, isolation and openness.
To advocate and practice multilateralism is not just China's choice, but also the preferred option of an overwhelming majority of countries.
The Politburo members' bilingual address emphasized the principle of sovereign equality.
All countries, regardless of size, strength, and wealth, are equal. The right of people of all countries to independently choose their development paths should be respected.
Yang said China would continue working with its partners around the world to cope with challenges like climate change, cybersecurity, terrorism, and natural disasters. Beijing has also stressed peace in waters closer to home. Yang emphasized China's commitment to implementing a major conduct agreement for the South China Sea with ASEAN countries. He said his government would work hard to take the regional agreement global. On trade, Yang pointed out that Beijing has concluded 17 free trade agreements with 25 countries and regions. He announced that in the coming 15 years, China would make major contributions to global economic growth, with the import of more than $30 trillion worth of commodities. Already, China has signed Belt and Road Cooperation agreements with over 150 countries, regions, and international organizations. Those account for more than $6 trillion of cumulative trade. Yang concluded his speech by hailing China's strategic partnerships with the European Union, pointing out that in that region, and elsewhere, win-win cooperation would help the world seize opportunities and help ordinary people achieve their aspirations for a better life. With Youyang, Daniel Plafker for CGTN.
Along the US border, opinions are split over the wall and its impact. The debate rages in the town of El Paso in Texas, where residents dispute claims that the wall has helped curb crime. CGTN's Dan Williams has the story.
A long line of fencing snakes along the Rio Grande, separating the US city of El Paso and Mexico's Ciudad Juarez. This barrier was completed in 2009. US President Donald Trump hails this as the blueprint for the US southern border. He says that once the wall was built, violent crime in the city fell dramatically. But local organizations say that's simply not the case.
Well, that's laughable. And if you live in El Paso, and if you were here in El Paso the last 20 years or 30 years, as we had been in El Paso doing this work, we know that that is a lie, and that is a distortion of the reality. El Paso started being one of the safest cities by the year of 2000, 2004. The timelines are different. However, the president wrongfully, with ill intention, connected the two timelines.
According to Federal Bureau of Investigation statistics, violent crime in El Paso declined since the mid-1990s. The city has consistently ranked in the top 5 of safest US cities since 2004. Despite the barrier, these two cities in two different nations are deeply intertwined. Each day, thousands of people cross over this border in order to work, to shop, to go to college, before then returning home. Many residents here feel the president's comments undermine the city's reputation.
There's often a lot of statements about what it's like being in a border city and how unsafe it is, and that's just a complete mischaracterization intentionally to make people feel unsafe in a place that there's no reason to feel unsafe.
They're saying that a wall protects us, but the people protect us. Where the people are safe because of the people, not because of the wall.
This is the supposed front line of the national emergency, but according to the US Customs and Border Protection Agency, there has been a sharp reduction in the number of apprehensions at the southern border compared to previous decades. If the wall is extended, some groups fear that migrants will simply take more desperate paths.
What you will see then is more people in danger. I mean, we already have 500 migrants dying a year because of this heavy enforcement and this militarized border. So we're going to see that increase. I mean, more people dying somewhere, in the hands of criminal organizations that will have the capacity to bring people out.
A border separates El Paso from Juarez, but it would appear that many here simply don't buy into the narrative that a wall has brought them peace and safety. Dan Williams, CGTN, El Paso, Texas.
Well, we are going to a short break now. Lots more to come, including a look at some cultural exchanges as ties between China and Senegal strengthen.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Canada, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival,
survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Senegal has been one of China's great partners in Africa, and the Confucius Institute of Dakar has been demonstrating this strong bond. Guests have been treated to dazzling cultural displays and several people honoured for their roles in helping grow the ties between the two countries.
China and Senegal first established ties in 1971. 40 years later, relations between the two countries continued to grow stronger. The Confucius Institute in Dakar honored pioneers in the country's diplomacy. Senegal's first ambassador to China, Ali Dioum, and others were honored.
I feel great joy and satisfaction in seeing the Confucius Institute celebrate the Chinese Spring and involve all those who are instrumental or involved in strengthening relations between China and Senegal. I'm very honored to have been distinguished and particularly moved because I could not have imagined in 1974, when I started teaching history of China in this university, that this institute would have been created on this campus as we can see today.
The event took place on the eve of Chinese New Year. The holiday celebrates rebirth and also an opportunity to strengthen bonds.
Every year we organize the New Year's Eve celebration, which is an opportunity to bring everyone together. In Senegal, this celebration started mainly because of China's increasingly strong presence in this friendly country. China has invested a lot here in recent years, and we have invited our Senegalese brothers to share with us this flagship event of our culture.
A perfect time to reflect on the bonds between both nations and to look forward to the future lessons they can teach each other.
China is a model for the Senegalese people, a model of resilience and a model of determination. I'm used to saying that the great lesson that China has taught the world and Senegal is how a nation must rely on its own strength to achieve development.
Guests were also treated to spectacular displays of Chinese culture. Astatal, CGTN.
A school wellness mobile project is continuing to make inroads in South Africa, bringing free primary healthcare to students in underprivileged schools in the Western Cape. This flagship project has seen the rollout of a wellness mobile, a specially outfitted medical bus conducting health screenings as well as dental procedures in schools. By focusing on children's health, the Western Cape government hopes to prevent sickness and to empower young people with the tools they need to succeed. CGTN's Travis Andrews has this report.
It's Health Screening Day, and for these young learners that means a visit to the Wellness Mobile, which just happens to be right next to their classrooms. Learners from the Yomalela Primary School in Cape Town's Khayelitsha Township are getting the full checkup, including oral hygiene screenings and procedures. The mobile health clinic is designed to be a one-stop health service to assist young learners.
So the learners where they don't have access to medical aid, but what is crucial is about the eyes, if they've got eye problems, the teeth, or even if they've got any other health-related matters. It will take them long to be sitting there at the clinic. In most instances, the parents are not there. So that's why we visit schools. We've got a school bus that visit all the schools.
Each wellness mobile boasts 3 separate compartments, including a general consultation room, a dental unit, and an optometry clinic, which can assist learners who may need spectacles. But there's a far greater benefit as well to having a wellness mobile paying schools regular visits in the marginalized townships.
highest common causes for children being absent from school when we look at the health is actually dental caries, so it's rotten teeth. That's probably the highest, you know, if you look at it, that's what keeps children mostly out of school. So with a facility like this, that's what we're exactly trying to reverse, we're trying to improve that.
So from the classroom to the bus, from fresh toothpaste to tooth extractions, never before has primary healthcare been such an accessible service, and should go a long way in laying the foundation for a good education for the future leaders of South Africa. There are more than 600 underprivileged schools like this in the Western Cape that could benefit from the Wellness Mobile and its facilities. It could also assist thousands of kids around the city who are yet to receive primary education in the future. Travis Andrews, CGTN, Cape Town.
We've got all the sport coming up for you after the break, including Uganda selects a strong team for the 2019 IAAF World Cross Country Championship.
Africa, where champions are made, records are broken, legends are born. We're there for every goal, for every knockout, for every step of the way. Match Point, only on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Uganda will be banking on Jacob Kiplemo's experience to win gold at the World Cross Country Championships next month in Denmark. Kiplemo beat seasoned athletes like Joshua Cheptegei, Stephen Kiprotich and Moses Kibet at Uganda's national track event. CGTN's Henry Ayesiga reports now.
Setting the pace, Jacob Kiplemo eyes the top prize, and after 10-kilometer dash at these national trials, is ready for the world yet again.
I cannot fear anyone. It's prepared. How you prepare yourself for training? I cannot fear anyone. As long as you are prepared, yes.
In 2017, Kiplemo won gold in the World Junior Cross Country Championships that were held in the Ugandan capital, Kampala. Many others, just like Kiplemo, are hoping for more glory.
We are expecting the best. And you remember, Joshua Cheptegei was supposed to win that race. Now we have got another person who is slightly better than maybe Joshua Cheptegei. And he's a younger one, Jacob Kiplemo.
But the chance of performing at the World Meet may not be Kiplemo's alone. And in the women's category, Stella Chesang hopes to bring home a medal.
I'm going back to and prepare for World Cross Country next month, 30th. So I'm going now to prepare for World Cross. You know, in World Cross, there are many people there, Kenyan, Ethiopians. Yeah, it is going to be competitive.
Kenya and Ethiopia still remain countries to beat in track events. After making it through this national challenge, top athletes will now pitch camp in Kapchorwa, Eastern Uganda, where they will polish their spikes for the World Cross Country Championship due next month in Denmark. Hilary Esiga, CGTN, Tororo, Eastern Uganda.
Ethiopian teenager Samuel Tefera outdueled compatriot Yomef Kejelcha to break the world indoor 1,500 meters record in Birmingham on Saturday. Tefera clocked 3 minutes 31.04 seconds at the IAAF World Indoor Tour meeting to take down Moroccan Hicham El Gourouji's 1997 record of 3.3118. Tefera upstaged compatriot and pre-race favourite Yomef Kejelcha on the final curve after tracking him the entire race. Kejelcha finished second in a personal best of 3.31.58. Motorcycle trials are still very small in South Africa, mostly taken up as a Sunday morning family hobby. There are a few riders who compete professionally, but they have to go overseas to places like the US or to Europe to do so. Here's CGTN's Julie Shear with more.
Unlike other motorcycle sports, trials are not about speed. It's about perseverance and skilled handling. Riders maneuver their motorbikes around a tough obstacle course with very little margin for error. Bruce Lirici is one of South Africa's top riders.
You've got to do more with the body than what the bike actually provides. So we don't rely on speed, pace or anything to carry us over rocks. So it's more of a finesse kind of sport, not just ramming the bike through and trying to get through as quick as possible.
The aim is simple. The competitor with the least points wins. Riders must keep their feet on the bike at all times. Only the tires can make contact with the track or they risk accumulating penalty points.
Yeah, you've got 10 sections, and for nationals you'll have 12 or 15. So it's set sections around a mountain, 4 laps around them, and then inside each competition you'll have 4 different levels, and it doesn't go on age, it goes on skill level.
The daredevil sport is garnering more interest among South Africans.
You need to balance, you need to think, you need to go slowly and anticipate and know what you're doing and have control over the bike.
You've got different classes, so that's why you can go from relatively easy to really hard. So if you look at the Masters, I mean, yeah, that's very hard, and it takes a lot of dedication and time.
So my dad got me into it. He's been riding for 35 years, and when I was about 12, I wanted a bike. My brother was riding, I wanted a bike, and then he finally got me one, and I just love the sport.
Sadly, there's very little focus on these trials in Africa, which makes it difficult for riders like Lirici to benchmark themselves and compete internationally. Julie Shara, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
And in the World Rally Championship, the last stages of the Rally Sweden will be held on Sunday. There was drama late on Saturday when several drivers crashed in the snowbanks due to slick conditions. Toyota's Tanak picked up 3 stage wins to extend his lead by nearly a minute, while a 3-way fight for second place has developed between Andreas Mikkelsen, Esa-Pekka Lappi and Thierry Neuville. Citroën's Lappi is second ahead of Mikkelsen, with Thierry Neuville back in 4th. Ford's Teemu Suninen spun into a tree, damaging his roll cage, and was forced to retire. And in the English Football Association Cup, Manchester City saw off-spirited Newport County in the 5th round, winning 4-1 to qualify for the quarter-finals. Having held firm up to half-time, Newport were undone 5 minutes into the second half when Leroy Sané's shot almost instantly, though, and Algerian international Riyad Mahrez sealed the win in the 4th minute of stoppage time, keeping City on target to win the FA Cup for the first time under Pep Guardiola.